So we just got back from a movie theater,
Mm-hmm.
in which if you'd been paying attention to our Instagram and our Twitter, you'd have known the movie that we just watched. Actually, you're seeing down in the title down below what we are watching, or what we watched, and that was Shin Godzilla, or Godzilla Resurgence.
Man.
Uh,
Man.
Toho's return to Godzilla after, 15 years away?
2004 was Final Wars.
Oh, okay, so 12 years away.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So 12 years away. And
2004 Japan, 2005 here, I think.
yeah, okay.
Something like that.
So the first offering of Godzilla from Japan in more than a decade.
Yep.
And honestly, I was at first nervous when I heard that they were doing it, but then when I heard who they got to be the director, Hideki Ono, very famous for Evangelion, and also his work with Hayao Miyazaki for Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind.
Yep.
And then the trailer came out, and we all saw Godzilla's design.
It was pretty great.
Well, at first I was a little skeptical of it because the design, a lot of people were.
Yeah.
A lot of people were apprehensive, but given everything that happened in the film, I can safely say that execution was brilliant.
Oh yeah,
and the monster design was tremendous.
Oh, and here's the thing. It wasn't the Doomsday situation where it's just like, oh, hey, let's show you the final monster. No. They showed you sort of a transition state.
They show you
nice.
They show you the monster in a select phase.
Yep.
Let's just call it that.
Yeah.
We don't want to give too much away.
Right.
We may do a little bit of spoilers here and there, and maybe I'll choose what to keep in and what to leave out.
Yep.
We'll so if you notice a sudden cut, like right there, so yeah, nothing was said, but I just do that just to remain a little bit meta, just to be a little bit meta. Anyway. But we all went and watched this at Carmike 14 in Johnson City. It was the only theater in our immediate area that was showing it.
The next one was like an hour and a half away.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really good. It was really convenient that it was that close to us.
Yeah, it's true.
And also, I figured all of us would want to watch it because it's because Micah here is an immense Godzilla fan, and I
watched a lot of Godzilla in my formative years, and maybe my post-formative years.
Well,
you've seen a lot of Godzilla movies, is what you're saying. But actually, we had one more go with us. Bo went with us.
Yeah, Bo went with us, and
unfortunately, due to illness, he wasn't able to come back and do the after action review.
Yeah, so you probably saw him in the Instagram photo and also on Twitter with us. So he saw it with us and he enjoyed it. Him and Mike actually had like
actually, I hadn't seen him in a while. I rode with Bo. We had a good long talk. It was nice.
Yep. Yeah, due to technical difficulties, we had to split the party. But what can you do?
Technical difficulties.
Somebody forgot the ticket.
Shut up!
I wasn't going to say that.
Shut up. Okay, I'm going to edit that out. Thank you, Micah.
That's a spoiler.
No, it's
spoilers.
Not. Okay.
Spoilers for life.
Due to my own... okay, here was the thing. When we were leaving, I had the tickets in my hand. The tickets were in my hand. And I couldn't find the key to lock the front door. And I remembered, oh, wait. And I went over to the countertop, and I laid the tickets down there, and I was looking around, scouring around, and then I heard you start your car up outside, and I was like, don't worry, I'll meet y'all down in the basement,
Because that's what I thought you were doing anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, I then grab my keys, and I proceed down the stairs, and I get the key out of my car, but I proceeded to forget the tickets on the counter.
Yep.
And
thankfully,
yes.
Elena
saving grace over there. So everybody thank Elena for saving the evening.
So that we were only about 5 minutes away when we realized we don't have the tickets.
Yeah. So
instead of
getting all the way there,
30 minutes to 45 minutes away. going.
Yeah.
We don't have the tickets, and it's almost showtime shit.
Yeah, so I would have just had to have rebought them.
Yeah,
probably. Because it wasn't a full theater. Don't get me wrong, the theater still had a lot of people in it.
Yeah, there were a lot more people than I was expecting.
Yeah, I was expecting a lot more people from the college. Because you all were talking about, like, the Japanese, the
Culture Club.
Culture Club would be there, but they weren't.
They might have gone to last night's.
Well, actually, tonight was the first night of showing.
Oh. Then why were people saying that it was sold out last night?
Oh.
Yeah, tonight was the second night. Because we talked about it was either going to be Tuesday or Wednesday.
Because I remember I got it for Wednesday because we were going to be streaming on Tuesday.
Yeah, and not all of us could have made it on Tuesday. Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's...
But that film was tremendous.
Yes. The monster... Like, we talked about the monster design, but how the film was shot...
Oh man!
For those of you who are fans of Hideki Ono, whether through Evangelion or any of his other projects, you'll see his signature with how there's some shots, and I appreciate the attention to detail that was paid in this film. Not just in the shots I expected, but also in the dialogue scenes. The dialogue scenes were very grossly detailed.
Oh yeah,
and they weren't. And okay. A lot of people will get confused by it because it's hard to keep up with. One, because of the language barrier, and because you have multiple lines to be reading at once. Because you have like explanations of who this person is.
Yeah, you have
above,
like titles, and then you have their dialogue.
Yeah, and I was able to keep up with most of it, but still, the story moved at a good enough pace to where I didn't get lost, which does happen sometimes. But honestly, everything was pretty well laid out there, and we were given a good solid story to follow.
And just a side note, I wouldn't try to memorize everybody's role and title and name because you're gonna see some of them again, and there's just so many of them, and not all of them are important.
Yeah.
So don't spend too much time going, okay, what's that person's name?
Yeah,
read the dialogue.
Yeah, the people whose names you're gonna remember. Mm-hmm. There's like 2 or 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that are really important. You don't necessarily have to worry about it, but honestly, like the first 15 minutes was a lot of government policy type stuff, and I know that sounds boring, but I was sitting there watching. I'm like, nothing is happening, but I'm so into this.
Yeah, it's kind of like the American government dramas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and that's the thing, because I'm usually not too into those. I'm like, yeah, okay, this is neat. This I was super invested in.
I think that goes part of the way that it's filmed, because one thing they really love to do in American ones is they love to do like huge like the big round table that you see in a lot of them, the conversation going on around the table. They like doing wide shots and like panning around like that, and that's compelling to some degree. But when you get up close and personal with the individuals that are in there, you get to know them, you get to see their faces, you get to see the lines on their faces, and you get to see just how worn and torn they are, or how fresh they are into the game, and you grow development with that, or you grow what's the word I'm looking for?
You become attached.
Yeah, you grow attachment to these characters, and when things happen later in the film, you're invested still because you feel like you have a personal connection with these people. And I just man.
And I mean, and the cinematics all through were just fantastic. And
yes.
Like the cinematics, the characterization, the dialogue, I thought it was all wonderful. And there's a point where a second team comes in, and looking back on it now, I'm like, they brought in a bunch of anime characters.
Mm-hmm.
They brought in a bunch of real people playing, like, you look at them and you're like, wait, this is just a real life anime.
I could
which
see
was
that.
Awesome.
I could see that with like some of the biologist characters. Like when you see those first 3 biologist characters,
the guy with the towel,
the pink towel around his neck,
and the girl who keeps staring at the computer screen. Those are straight up anime characters.
Yeah, they are,
and I love it. And then there's the one guy who's constantly like leaning over and looks like he's kind of scheming a little bit. That guy, it's crazy.
Yeah,
It's just like let's bring in this group of anime characters
you have
make it work.
You also have the one who has the outbursts.
Yeah,
the over the top outbursts. Which honestly, I thought I honestly when it first started, I'm like, oh gosh, here we go with the ham. But no, there was no ham. It was really like
good.
really well
it
balanced.
was very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
man.
you needed little bits of levity to break up the tension just a little bit, because otherwise you just get mired down in it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it was well done. It was punctuated very well. I liked it.
Yeah.
The special effects.
Oh yes.
Oh man.
Yeah, and the special effects. We actually Googled that, or we actually, Micah, did you know this beforehand that it was a suit and CG?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I could just tell.
Oh, you could tell.
Because there are some things that I know I was like that's a suit, like 100%.
Okay.
But then some of it was CG. Just
I mean, yeah, just to make some of the shots easier, I would imagine.
Yep.
Yeah.
But man, it was so good, and there were some things that happened, like, all right, the movie takes place in Tokyo, so there's a lot of trains involved.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there was one moment where a train gets sent flying, and I had that weird reaction when you see a train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Half of you is just like, oh man, that's awful, and the other half is like, for some reason, this is funny.
Yeah. Okay.
It's weird. It's so weird.
Well, for one thing, I think it might be the idea that okay. Have you ever seen a train derail?
I have not.
I have.
not in person, no.
No,
Well,
not
in
person.
Well, I have. Albeit it was a small. It was an old coal train,
Mm-hmm.
and it derailed. And thankfully, the derailment wasn't that bad. It just went off the tracks and then scooted to a stop. And it was
that could be a lot worse.
It was a scary moment, but thankfully it was only the locomotive and the coal car behind it. And I've seen some. There's actually one earlier this year in Denmark that was like really scary. It was, I think, like a 40 car train.
Oh jeez.
And it had passengers on it. And it was really scary to see, because there were people like waiting at a crosswalk, and then all of a sudden you see like the train, like it's going into a turn, and then goes off, and then the others like group up behind it and do like the weird snake, the weird snake
like
formation
where it sort of folds up.
Yeah, and I saw that in this film. There's some parts where it's done by the monster.
Yeah.
And then there are other parts later on.
We're not gonna. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's other parts later on.
There's a lot of trains.
Yeah,
That's
there's a
all
lot
I'm
of
saying.
trains in this, and well, considering that Japan in terms of their technology with trains, like for instance, the bullet train.
Yeah,
for
dude,
goodness'
I want
sake.
to ride a bullet train.
The bullet trains to me are just unbelievable. Like in terms of technological advancement, the fastest. I mean, for the longest time they had the fastest trains in the world, and it took a long time for everyone else to catch up, because that technology. You see, that's one thing about this film is also the attention to detail. With a lot of things, the attention to details. Those little. That's just like you talked about. For like Ben, you talk about Dark Souls, the first Dark Souls game. The amount of detail in that.
Yeah.
And then in the second game, that detail is missing, and it kills the immersion for you.
Yeah. I mean, and that is, it's not just like an attention to detail thing. That's more just like the care put into crafting the game, because instead of having a world where the entire world is spaced out properly, it actually feels like a world. You're going up, you walk into a place from the ground level, you start going up, and you come out underground. You're going up through a windmill. You can see the top of this windmill from outside. You come up the very top, and you are underground in a molten lava area. The enemies in the windmill don't feel right. But this one, like, one of the details that got me was at one point there's an evacuation, and everybody is grabbing a bunch of stuff off of tables, and they go running out, and the desk chairs are spinning. That detail. And they actually focus on that shot for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I was like, that's really good attention to detail.
Well,
because they could have just had nothing. No, that was exactly the way it would have been.
Well,
it was perfect.
I think it helped portray the urgency as well. The
Yes.
urgency that was there, and also a little bit of a comedic edge because you see the chairs spinning. That's a pretty funny thing.
Yeah.
But also, it gives the urgency of what is happening at that precise moment. And in terms of okay, this film will always be compared to the 2014 legendary Godzilla.
I mean, it is the most recent movie, so
because they're the most recent films in the Godzilla. And also it's two different takes on it by two different studios.
Yeah,
Legendary being one and Toho being the other. Toho being the originator, Legendary being kind of the new kids on the block because they tried out Pacific Rim, and I thought Pacific Rim was tremendous.
I did too. It was wonderful.
But apparently, I guess they didn't get the memo because they. But anyway, that's an argument for a different time.
Pure unadulterated rage.
But they took a risk with Godzilla, and the feels of both films are different.
Oh yeah.
Like in the American Godzilla from Legendary, Gareth Edwards said he wanted to do what Jaws did. He wanted to pull off what Jaws did. The anticipation is what gets you, and then the eventual reveal. The eventual reveals are like pure catharsis. You go from or like a pure cathartic just release.
Yeah.
And honestly, for what it was in the film, I liked it a lot. I liked the build. I liked the build that was present in the film.
Yeah,
it wasn't fully my cup of tea, but at the same time, I could appreciate what it was doing. This film, however, on the other hand, it's also a build, but instead of the human characters being instead of the human characters being like full front and center. They're actually like all in a cohesive unit, all working together.
Yeah,
you have a few.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say that too. The American Legendary is focused on individuals. And
like a couple of different characters.
Yeah,
and in this one, there's so many characters all at once, and they're all working together and communicating and interacting in a very believable environment. That's undergone a lot of upheaval because hey, Godzilla.
Yeah.
And
spoilers, Godzilla's in the
spoilers, Godzilla's in the movie.
And for me, like you were saying, Elena, it was the individuals that are present in that's like one of the biggest reasons I wanted to see Godzilla is because Bryan Cranston was in it. This film,
for like 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Spoilers for Legendary Godzilla.
I'm angry about that. Leave me alone. I wanted more Bryan Cranston.
I did too.
Everybody wanted more Bryan Cranston.
But for me, in Shin Godzilla, I felt that there were a couple that you could see as main characters. There's one in particular. Yosagi, I believe.
Yaguchi.
Yaguchi?
No.
I forget.
It's
Yaguchi.
Yeah. Rando Yaguchi.
Rando Yaguchi, yeah.
I definitely remember Rando.
Yeah. Yeah, Rando Yaguchi.
I think I think that's right.
Yeah, he was sort of
Rando Calrissian. Rando
Calrissian, yeah.
Calrissian.
Yeah, no. Rando Yaguchi is sort of the main character.
Well, if you can call him that.
If you can call him that, because really the main character is Godzilla.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Let's see. Let me actually look.
We did our research. We just saw this movie.
And by that, we mean Nate's looking it up right now.
Rando Yaguchi.
Yep.
Okay.
Told you.
Rando Yaguchi.
Okay. There you go.
His name you don't have to remember. It's going to show up a bunch
of
times.
Oh, dude, it shows up a lot. Yeah.
Well, they named the initiative after him and its initial workings of the sort of alternative group.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then
the anime character.
And then
the ragtag team.
And then there's Akasaka. Okay, Akasaka. I whispered this to Ben. Um.
Oh, yeah.
Looked like Caleb.
It is. It does look like Caleb.
Looked like Caleb, without the glasses and with
Yeah.
the more. You know,
And he was sort of delivering like a Caleb type demeanor.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Well, he was kind of the guy that his task was keeping everything on the rails in the proceedings. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
Which spoilers was not easy.
no.
No.
he tries to keep Yaguchi
Yeah.
in line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Stop him from
Whi-
making too much trouble.
which actually gets into some of the themes of the movie. Because,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, of course, you've got one of the main themes of the movie being humanity being the monster.
Mhm.
But one of the themes that we didn't really touch on is the idea of order versus free thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Because order doesn't work, and in fact, order ends up almost being very, very bad.
Yes.
It's the free thinkers that end up coming up with a plan. It's the free thinkers, the weirdos, the guys who cause trouble.
the anime character.
The anime characters. They're
yeah.
the ones that
The otaku.
Yeah.
The otaku are the heroes.
they're the ones that get it done because they're not in a box. They're not constrained. One of the running themes is do as you like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It's a motif.
a motif. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a motif.
But then of course you have the main theme of in this case Godzilla as the counterbalance to humanity. Which
Yeah.
I'll let you talk about, Micah, because you do it.
Yeah,
way better.
yeah.
Oh, well, it's just I really enjoyed this. I can definitely say this is the most complete vision of Godzilla probably since the original 1954 version.
Which is a hell of a statement.
This is a return to Godzilla as a horror franchise.
Which
For sure.
very welcome. In my opinion.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing is I enjoyed it tremendously, and I think I can't say that I liked the design, but I understood all the choices involved, and I think they were the right choices, or at least better than I could ever do.
Some of the design choices were weird, but they made sense.
They do. They justify everything really well. This is
Yeah.
this is definitely the most grown up Godzilla movie ever made, because I mean, the original one in 1954, it was a horror movie. Like, people were scared of it. But I mean, in 1954, they didn't have near the technology to produce this kind of vision.
It's true.
And if anything came close to like reproducing the horror of nuclear negligence, I mean, this movie did a pretty good job.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Because
man.
I mean, it was a scary movie. Like, it sort of sent me to a dark place. I've been to Japan. I've been to the Hiroshima Memorial.
Yeah.
And
There were points in this movie where you're just like,
I mean, I no one has ever dropped a nuclear bomb on me. No one's ever dropped a nuclear bomb on my grandmother. So I can't say I know what it's like, but I've researched it a lot, and often find myself with differing opinions on the use of nuclear weapons on civilian populations.
Well, the amount of devastation caused by it, it'll be questioned until the end of time, and it will always be a sore spot. In terms of relations between people from the U.S. and people from Japan, because in all honesty, you know, people could say, "Oh, Japan. Well, we have Pearl Harbor to remind us." Well, Japan attacking Pearl Harbor, that's one thing.
Well, I mean, I follow Dr. Robert Higgs very closely, and he runs into a lot of red herrings when he speaks out against the bombings of Japan, because Japan is sort of unique in this scenario. They're the only country that's ever had nuclear weapons used on it.
Yeah, that's something that Japan really has to itself.
And it's sort of it's interesting. The story of Godzilla, it is basically the story of post-war Japan. It's sort of this equal mix of hope and horror, because I mean they experienced something that no population has ever experienced, and hopefully never will again.
Yeah, I hope that as well.
And from just a terrible time in humanity, rebuilt an entire country to become, one of the preeminent powers in the world. I mean, the technology that's come out of Japan for decades now has revolutionized the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was actually looking at this. I brought this man up several times. You talked about the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There's one man who is recognized by the Japanese government as who survived both of them, and it was Tsutomu Yamaguchi. And I mentioned him. It was like, how tough was this guy? He survived both bombings, and he lived to be 93. He died in 2010.
Yep.
That's tough. That's tough, old man. And well, anyway, you look at the effect that the atomic bombings have had on Japan as a whole. You look at the art that came out after. You look at the works that have come out after. Even now, more than 60 or more than 70 years later, we are still the stigma is still there of it.
Sure.
Because it is the only time in history that it has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And as they say in the movie, post-war doesn't end. You're always post-war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's always there.
Well,
Lingering.
Yeah.
So.
And this film does a wonderful job of also, okay. Another thing about what I've seen about in terms of media from Japan, I've watched some anime, and always in the anime, the Americans are mostly portrayed as bullheaded. And I'm not going to say that that's not present here. The bureaucrats are the ones who are bullheaded, whereas the soldiers, the ones who realize that unconventional means are the only way we are going to truly fight this monster. They're the ones who are seen as more sane-headed, and I like that. I like that it shows both sides. It's just like, there are sides of the Japanese government that didn't agree with the plan, and then there are the ones who thought it was the only hope. And again, there are two sides to every argument, and always portraying one side or always portraying one group as always going this way, to me that's uninteresting, because there's always dissenters. There's always people who will be questioning and who will always not be comfortable with the idea. And I like that it was portrayed in this, that it is humanity's struggle almost against itself for what is right. And I just, gosh, I love this film. It raises so many questions. It's just so much to take in and soak in. It's just like, how long did we sit around after and ponder this?
We must have talked around. We must have held Bo up 30 minutes.
Yeah,
because Bo had to drive home and all of this stuff, and was not well.
Yeah.
I'm glad that he got to come and hang out, and hopefully he'll come and hang out more.
Yes.
Fingers crossed. No promises, but fingers crossed.
Uh-huh.
But we stood around and we talked about this movie quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed we've got stuff left in the tank to talk about here. But this movie was just, man, it's hard to describe. To bring a little levity in, I've never seen a crane be so badass. For one thing,
it was definitely the most well thought out and put together story.
It was super good.
And there were moments of levity, but it was they tried to base it in reality. There were no psychics.
No.
Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. There were no aliens like every Godzilla ever.
Yeah.
There was no comic relief baby Godzilla. No offense. Love him.
Godzuki lovers.
Well, that was a cartoon.
I know. I'm just joking.
And the plan that they came up with made pretty good sense.
Mm-hmm. It was rooted in actual science.
Yeah, there was not a whole lot of pseudoscience involved, which is amazing considering Godzilla.
Yeah, no creature could be that colossal of a size to support its own weight under any circumstances.
It's true. But that was.
But the plan that the ragtag group came up with was feasible. Then
Yeah.
we were presented with the other plan, the UN-led coalition that
that plan was ridiculous and
headed up by, of course, ridiculous U.S. foreign policy that threatened to,
and like that plan came up, and we all just started looking at each other, going, "Did they not realize that is the exact opposite of what they need to be doing?"
Yeah, there's a horrific moment where the top-down hierarchy comes up with their plan,
and that plan is awful.
And then you sort of see the Japanese like just reel back in horror from it.
Well,
it's a pretty heavy moment.
And amazingly enough, it wasn't just the United States and Japan that we saw in this movie. We saw the French, we saw Germany.
Yeah.
And it was...
China and Russia were mentioned.
China and Russia were mentioned, which makes sense because, oh, hey, who's right there next to Japan that might be in Godzilla's path next?
Sure. China and Russia.
China and Russia. Mm-hmm. That would be bad.
Yeah. I'm surprised South Korea didn't send Psy down to do the Gangnam Style dance.
That would have been too much.
I know. That would have been
I'm just joking. Too much.
I'm just joking about that.
That movie was well crafted.
Very well crafted, and
it was really, really good.
I'm just so happy that they brought it here. That they brought it they brought it to this area.
Yeah, I mean, even as a limited engagement.
Yeah,
that was brilliant.
Yeah, only in theaters 1 week.
Yeah, and if you have a chance to go see it, I don't know when this is coming out.
Yeah, I'll release this tomorrow.
If you have a chance to go see it, do it.
Yes, please do.
Do it. It's so good.
Yes, it is.
Also, that ending scene was terrifying.
Yes, it was.
I mean, that's all I'm going to say about the ending. But that ending scene was terrifying.
Yeah, this is definitely Godzilla as a horror movie.
Oh yeah,
and I love that. I love that Godzilla has returned to being the force of nature that he truly is.
Well, to be fair, if you were from where he was from, you'd be fucking dead.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Scout logic.
Yeah, I mean it's true though.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course.
Holy crap! That movie was excellent.
Very, very good.
Yeah,
very well done. And okay,
man, oh man,
a lot of people have been upset over this film in some regards because Hideki Ono was actually working on
what's supposed to be upsetting.
No.
Yeah, but
I mean, it's a horror movie.
Before that,
before Hideki Ono, before this film, before he was signed on to direct this film and write it, was actually in the process of finishing up Rebuild of Evangelion. Rebuild of Evangelion has been this very highly anticipated series and everything. And, he took the opportunity to work on this because I heard he was dealing with frustrations with the Rebuild of Evangelion production.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this gave him a sane enough head to go back to it. But if the success of this film, if this film is, like, ultra successful, which from what I'm understanding, in Japan, it's already, like, really, really successful. Mm-hmm. If this film is ultra successful, no doubt that they're going to ask Ono to come back and do another one, if in fact they want to do another one. Because I don't know. I really
typically, historically, the different eras of Godzilla have been separated by the director, so they'll carry a director vision for a few movies.
Okay.
Or they've done that in the past. I mean, it could change.
Mm-hmm.
So really, depending on what Godzilla you gravitate to, is kind of the director that did it. Whether it's like your like comedic, like superhero Godzilla from back in like the 70s, or you're kind of more natural predator, or like he's become a villain in some movies, but this is definitely like that.
Well, actually, go ahead.
I can't really say a force of nature. He's almost like a reckoning. I call that Newtonian force. He is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's more fair.
He's almost like in this
an opposite reaction.
He's almost like a penance for nuclear negligence, which is kind of the social commentary. I mean, that's his origins. I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, the what you said about he's kind of like the reckoning and everything. I could see that because the Godzilla portrayed in this he's just a creature.
Yet no personality.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that benefits this Godzilla particularly because he's an animal.
Mhm.
He's an animal
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't really have any other sense but live.
Yeah.
Because that's what is the driving force of all of life on the world? Live, to strive to survive until the next day. And though Godzilla in this is portrayed in a certain way, when you watch this, you'll understand what we're saying. I'm not going to give a lot away, but the way this Godzilla is portrayed is it almost in the beginning acts scared in some ways.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And it's in fear of where it is, because it's this creature that really doesn't have any other thing to guide it. It doesn't have a parental figure to.
Yeah, it's so rapidly mutated that it kind of its construction demands that it's unique.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you see new creatures are often thrust into this world without any without a world without training wheels, which the world doesn't give you training wheels.
Mm-hmm.
As I've
I
heard
don't
you
know.
say.
I don't know where you'd find training wheels big enough for this thing.
I don't know either. Oh man.
Well, it's an interesting concept because it's unique. So it's not an animal that requires social skills because there's no sociability because it's unique.
Yeah.
And then the driving mechanism behind it is that it can mutate rapidly to be,
Whatever it needs to be.
it's to be perfectly survivable in whatever
Any
environment is
conditions.
presented.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which the implications are interesting because they made it into Godzilla, but the implications are it can
Become
anything
it wants to suit its environment, so it could look vastly different.
Yeah.
Depending on what it's confronted with.
And I mean, they brought up some in the movie. They brought up some very interesting ideas about what it could become, and
Well, because traditionally Godzilla has had like rapid regeneration, and there were a lot of plot lines with G cells where they would try and extract them to use them to cure cancer or something,
and then something goes horribly wrong.
And then Mothra carries it into space, and they make Space Godzilla from whatever.
Oy vey.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I love Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, but
Damn.
the story is terrible.
Yeah.
And psychics.
Yeah. This story was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the story in this was as you put, very mature, very grown up.
Yes.
And also, going back to Anno's style and everything, for those of you who have watched Evangelion,
Oh yeah,
you'll see a few nods to Evangelion as well, in terms of the scenes involving Godzilla, which when I first saw, I was like, wait a minute, that looks very familiar to. Oh, awesome!
There was that one sort of transitional scene, and you looked at me and you're like, "That's straight out of Evangelion."
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I was
I
like,
remember that.
"Okay, all right, that makes sense," because it felt kind of weird to have that there. But then you said that, and I went, "Oh, now it all makes sense."
Well, yeah. Anno's style really lended itself very well to Godzilla, and I think, as Anno put it with interviews, Godzilla has always been like one of his dream projects. He started out in animation, working under Miyazaki. When you work under Miyazaki, you learn a lot of things.
You pick up a thing or two.
Yeah, and he picked up a lot, and he pretty much went on to form his own style with Evangelion and the other projects they worked on. Evangelion's pretty much what he's mostly known for. But now that he's done a live action Godzilla, I think people are going to see him in a different light. And honestly, I don't think. Well, I'm not gonna say he didn't have the respect of his peers in the filmmaking world, but I think people will see him differently as not just this guy who can do awesome animation, and craft great stories with animation, but now is a great storyteller, even with live action, because Miyazaki never dabbled with live action, and I'd like to have seen what Miyazaki could have done with live action, but with Mike is saying, with the technology that we have nowadays, things that were not possible back then are possible now. Shots that you would never be able to get back in 1954 are nothing now.
Yeah.
I mean, just because of drone cams and because of CGI and because
computer technology,
Yeah.
all of that, yeah.
everything's just so much. The possibilities are so great now for getting shots that honestly would not be possible. And I think any other things that you all want to touch on?
I just had a thought about there were a fair few shots of just people living in the city
Yeah.
and the way they would react to this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I think about it, the more I feel like he hit the nail perfectly on the head there, because those scenes were pretty much exactly how I would expect things to go down.
Yeah.
There were definitely some moments of like, oh, this is crazy. What's going on? Haha, I don't know what's happening. And then shit gets real and they go, oh crap.
Yeah.
And you can see the switch. Mm-hmm. And that's some fine detail work.
Yeah.
It was impressive.
Very.
But yeah, overall, this film was well crafted.
Very well.
But yeah, I'll shut up now. Micah, Elena, what you guys got?
I liked even though I wasn't a big fan of the higher ups in the Japanese government, but when the movie started, I liked the frame, the different shots of them in the room with all the different people.
Yeah.
Because you felt like you were there. Because people would have to lean around people to be in the shot, like you would if you were talking to people in a room.
You'd see
on
people,
a couch.
You'd see people sneak up with notes
and give them to people.
Just like stand against the wall, because that's yeah. Those were really good shots.
And I mean, there's like a lot of bureaucratic meandering, which is would actually happen in the situation. They do they do make it fairly interesting though. But you have all your tropes. He comes in, stepping all over buildings to Godzilla's march. He uses atomic ray. You've got tanks and helicopters shooting missiles at him, and he's just shrugging it off.
Taking it.
They bring back his nuclear pulse attack from like the '95 Godzilla versus King Ghidorah.
Okay.
So it's all like the classic tropes. Like it's got Godzilla stuff in it.
That, it's
they have to have in every movie. That's just impressive.
Yeah.
But it's not cheesy in any way.
No.
Oh no.
In this movie.
No. It looks really
But
good.
it definitely has the horror flavor to it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an unsettling movie.
Well, it's just like when something happened, I remember Ben looked over at me, and he had a horrified look on his face over what was going to happen.
Oh yeah.
And
No, I remember that
I'm not
exact
gonna-
point, and I went,
And I remember when something else happened, you were like, oh my gosh, and you actually nudged Elena. She's like, did you notice that? And she's like, no. It's like, look, and then she noticed it too, and it was just like, oh wow.
Yeah.
And you see it when you
Yeah,
create
yeah, I
that.
remember, yeah.
When you create that urgency, when something is happening, something that is when you throw in an unknown into the equation, unknown to the character, because we as experienced Godzilla watchers, we know what's going to happen, but we don't know the extent of what is going to occur. And when you throw that you throw that up to characters who've never experienced it before, and you see just their pure look of horror, and just they're both mystified and just beyond words.
Well, part of it, I think, is that we, as experienced Godzilla watchers, have sort of the maybe not third-person omniscient, but close to that.
It's like
third,
dramatic irony.
Third-person well-informed.
Yeah.
So, like, you see...
Uh-oh.
What?
Sorry, I had that there.
You see the decisions being made, and you immediately know that's a terrible idea. Don't ever do that.
Mm-hmm.
But the people there are thinking, yeah, this is a good idea, even though there are people there who know that's a terrible idea, but they can't really get their point across. This movie's really good.
Yeah. And oh gosh, we've been ranting on it for about 45 minutes
This
now.
surprises me not at all.
Nope.
So, all right.
But
Do any of you want to give a final rating on the film? Like what you thought? Like, you can do like I recommend, or if you want to do a number scale or anything like that.
Definitely go see it. It's worth it.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because even if you don't like it, even if it's not your thing, I think just as far as social commentary, I think it's a very valuable movie.
Yeah.
And it's much more sophisticated than a lot of Godzilla movies from the past. If you thought they were cheesy, go see this one.
Yeah, like that.
Okay.
That is one of the best horror movies I've seen.
Yeah,
And-
I can agree with that.
I mean that movie was well done. It was well crafted down to very fine detail. And yeah, I think you should go see it. I thought it was absolutely tremendous.
Absolutely. I can recommend it as well. I recommend it for the visuals, for the story, for Godzilla. I mean, just seeing Godzilla again.
I mean, like we can't neglect that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yes, and also because of the commentary, like Micah said.
Oh yeah.
Not everyone's gonna like this film. I mean, I know there's some people. Actually, there were some people who walked out of the Raid. I remember I was working in a movie theater, and the Raid 2 was playing, and it's in Indonesian, and I was watching. I was like sitting there at the podium where the tear tickets, and people walked out of the film, and I was like, "Oh, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with the film?" It was like, "It's not in English." And I'm like, yeah, it states on the it states here that we say that in it's actually Indonesian. It's subtitled, but it's like I ain't got time to read that stuff. I want a refund. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
but I know
The reading's not that bad in this one.
no, it's not.
Yeah.
You can keep up with it rather easily. And,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and the story's not convoluted enough to where you're going to get lost, and not much is lost in the culture. Because some people say, oh, the culture boundary is where you lose a lot of stuff in translation, but not with this.
That didn't happen here.
Nope. It was
No.
a classic government drama. I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't feel American because it was more measured.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Than American government dramas for obvious reasons.
But it was still
Yeah, it was that kind of feel.
it was very, very quality.
Yes. So I think we all give it a good recommendation.
Oh yeah.
So
Definitely.
if it's in the theater around you, go ahead and check it out. Should be in theaters until the 18th of October.
Yeah.
And hey, if you're watching this after, then hey, wait for it to come out, buy it or rent it or watch it, and tell us what you think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if
I want to hear people's opinions.
Yeah,
on
if
this.
you've seen the film, let us know what you think in the comments down below.
mhm.
Try to remain spoiler free, guys. I mean, we let a little bit slip here and there, but
we did pretty good overall. I think.
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
So anyway, let us know what you thought. Let us know if you want to see another Godzilla film directed by Hideki Ono. Let us know.
I sure as hell do.
Oh, I do too. Let us know if how you would do a sequel with this. I mean, honestly, put anything you want in the comments, guys.
Yeah.
Spaghetti. Oh gosh, that's a callback.
Some sort of spaghetti.
Yeah. So
Well,
anyway,
spaghetti.
anyway, thank you all so much for tuning into this. Signing off once again for the Renegades. Well, I'm Nate,
Micah.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Elena.
and we will see you all later. Take care, everyone.
Bye bye.